Today, we're going to discuss what the best wall material is for a wood shop. I've chosen 3/4 inch BCX plywood, and I've gotten 4 panels in already, including the seamless window opening. So let's get the next 4 panels in, and we'll talk about the alternatives. I actually had to run to town to get some paint last night, and right before I went, I could see that there was like a 2-inch bow to the center of this panel that I had just put on here when I started yesterday. So I put all of this weight on there. These are solid concrete blocks. I put this on there when I got back with the paint. So when I got started today, I printed up this sheet. This is what I used to figure out what I was going to put on the walls. And we'll go through some of this stuff as I put up these panels. But I was trying to figure out the pros and the cons of the different materials. And anybody who's building a shop is going to go through this. I believe they're going to go through this. I mean, you got drywall, the bare studs, or the post framing. I had that in my original shop. It was just a garage with framing, and I hung stuff here and there wherever I could and put little shelves between the studs and stuff like that. Drywall, even with the bare studs, if the garage is attached, you're going to have drywall on at least one wall. And again, we got pros and cons that we'll go over a little bit later. OSB, which is fairly common these days. It was not when I had my first shop. Plywood, I consider plywood to be the Cadillac of shop walls. And I went with 3/4, but some people go with half. I don't know if anybody goes with thinner than that. Let me know in the comments if you have. I'd be interested in hearing how that worked out. It seems way too thin for me. I have all the costs and stuff in here as well. And then metal, I was going to use that for the entire room when I first designed this. And now it's just the ceiling, and it's going to be from the ceiling down to the top of the plywood on this wall and that wall, and this wall and that wall are going to be solid plywood. All right, let me get this laid out and hung, and then we'll go over this in a little more detail as we go. The reason that I chose 3/4 inch ply, well, several of the reasons are that it's incredibly durable. It absorbs sound really well. It does bounce it around because it's smooth, but it absorbs it as well. And that you can fasten stuff pretty much anywhere on the sheet or on the entire wall. And you can't do that with a few of the other alternatives. Unfortunately, 3/4 inch BCX ply is the most expensive option, I believe, by far. I have all the numbers over on that sheet, and I'll show you in a little bit. But it's at least twice as expensive as like OSB. OSB has come up in price a lot, but I believe it's at least twice as expensive. Metal is pretty expensive as well, but it's a bit less than the 3/4 inch ply. One thing that all of the materials have in common is a fastening pattern, and you really need to follow that, or you're going to have issues later. With most of the plywoods, it's 6 inches on center around the edges and 12 inches on center in the field. And then you have a gap. It's 1/8 of an inch on plywood. On drywall, there's no real gap, and the metal overlaps. But on plywood, you definitely need to leave that gap, or the first overly humid day, you're going to have your panels destroy themselves. I got to move my big blocks out of the way, and we're almost ready to drill. This is why I could really use a track saw. I just got a roller stand out there, but any of you who have done this before know that roller stands are notorious for tipping over. I could use an outfeed table as well, but I'm going to have to get that built once I get the walls done. All right, let's get this over on some sawhorses, and we'll go over part of that list. I'll read it to you, and you can give me your opinion on it. Before we get to the list here, I should show you what we're doing. The panels are coming out a little bit wider than 48 inches. So if we just kept going with an 1/8 inch space on each, we'd have about 1.5 inches off. And 1.5 inches would take me right to the edge of one of our dividers here. And I don't want that to happen. So I ripped a little bit off of one over there, and I did the same here. The next one's going to be a full panel, and then this end one gets ripped anyways. Okay, so back to the list. The first option is bare studs or bare post framing. Let me show you the post framing really quick. This is bare post framing. You have posts spaced pretty widely. This is 8 feet on center, and on the end walls, they're 9 feet on center. And then you have girts that are spaced, well, that can vary. I believe these are pushing 3 feet, but I have girts on the inside as well. And this is bare studs. Well, it would be if I didn't have insulation shoved in there. So you have places to screw stuff every 16 inches on center, or possibly 24. And you could put little shelves in between it and stuff like that. I did that in my first shop. I had a bunch of little shelves and stuff, and I screwed stuff right to the studs, which is about what you need to do with drywall. You can screw through the drywall into the studs if you have something heavy, but if you screw into any other area, it's just not that strong. And the cost of drywall is 46 cents per square foot for 5/8 and 31 cents per square foot for 1/2 inch. And that's in our area, western Wisconsin. The bare studs is obviously free, but has a huge amount of limitations. Drywall has a huge amount of limitations as well, except it may be required by code, especially if you're in an attached garage. It might even be 2 thicknesses of 5/8 inch drywall, which would have a little bit more holding power than the other options there. Then we got OSB. This is 5/8 inch OSB. It's smooth on one side, but it's really not that smooth, and you can peel chunks of it off. And the other side is rough. I would actually put this side towards the shop, the rough side, because it's going to help a lot to deaden the sound. Something smooth like this is just going to bounce sound waves, and something rough like this is going to absorb sound waves. So this would actually be better sound-wise, but OSB really doesn't hold screws all that well. If you were to hang a cabinet from this stuff, I'm going to say it would end up pulling out at some point. But a lot of people use OSB, and I'm going to use OSB on the other side of this wall. I'll fasten stuff right to the studs. I'll go right through the OSB into the studs, and I believe it'll make a real good wall out there, but not quite as good in here because I want the pullout strength of 3/4 inch plywood. Normally I would use my combination square for this, but I seem to have misplaced it working on the tiny house over there. Another option, if you do have drywall, you can put any of this stuff over drywall. Metal, plywood, OSB, you can put any of those over drywall. And if it's in an attached garage, that's not a bad option. I've had every one of these at one point. Oh yeah, concrete block, brick, or poured concrete. I've had 2 basement shops. One had concrete block and one had poured concrete. That's got its own issues, and we'll talk about that once I get this panel up. With concrete, you have the option of taking a treated wood stud. You don't want to put regular wood up against concrete. Take a treated wood stud and attach it right to the concrete. Then you can put whatever kind of wall you want on it, and you can fill the open spaces with foam, like this foam right here, and you're off to the races. I did that in one shop. Another shop had block, and when I drilled into that, a couple places it leaked. So you got to be real careful with concrete block. Okay, we're down to the last one. This one needs to be ripped. I have that laid out. I'm just going to take the circular saw and do it by eye, because this edge is not going to matter in the least bit. We're going around the corner, and the edge is going to be covered by 3/4 of an inch. I just want it so that I don't have to mess with it. We have 1/8 of an inch here, and I believe on this side, well, we'll see. I think it's off by, I think it's a little tight in the middle, and then I think the bottom and the top, I think there's a 1/16 of an inch difference in the bottom and the top, but we'll see once we got it cut and put up. But like I said, it's not going to matter. And there you have it. We have the 3/4 inch BCX plywood on one entire wall. Another reason why I chose the 3/4 inch BCX is because we have 8 feet between posts, and it's just girts on a flat in between that. You could see that on this side. There's a grade beam down at the bottom that's encased in concrete, and then you have 1, 2, 3, 4 girts that are on the flat. There's a post there, and then we have a window in this opening, and then a post there, and finally a post in the corner. So it has to span 8 feet. Post here and a post there. So that's all just girts on a flat. So the 3/4 inch plywood with 4-inch screws into the post, and then all these screws into the girts, is going to make this really strong. Yeah, you can't even push it in. And before, well, I can show you that. You can push that real easy, and you can't do it on that side. But I would be really interested to hear from other people on what they have in their shop, and if they have anything different than this stuff. We have bare studs or post framing, drywall, OSB, plywood, metal, or concrete block and brick. I don't think we really got into metal that much. This metal is, what is that, 24 gauge or 26 gauge? It's kind of flimsy when it's not screwed down to anything, but once you got it screwed down, it's fairly durable, but you really have a hard time attaching anything to it, and it's definitely not going to hold up cabinets or anything. And these big ribs just make it really hard. You have to put something in there, some kind of a spacer. If you were to have it on the walls, you would have to have a spacer and then have something going across, some kind of a cleat, like a French cleat, in order to hold up a cabinet. So metal will work, but it makes everything more difficult, and it's expensive. We have metal at $1 a square foot. That's what I paid for it. I don't know what the current price is because the price of metal has been going up and down. The plywood prices, the 3/4 inch ply right now is $1.37 a square foot for 3/4 inch. 1/2 inch is $1.14 a square foot. OSB is 63 for 5/8 and 46 cents for 7/16. I don't know if I would even use 7/16 OSB unless I had a drywall backer. I'm going to put OSB on that other wall back there, but I believe I'm going to use 5/8 inch. And drywall, we went over drywall before. Drywall is by far the cheapest, but it has a lot of issues. You could put French cleats on it and just screw it right into the studs, but I like the flexibility of being able to put a screw anywhere, hang a cabinet anywhere, put a little hook or whatever you need, and do it wherever you want. So that's why I chose the 3/4 inch plywood in addition to the problems with the girts. But like I said, let me know what you have in the comments, especially if it's different from any of this stuff, and that may help somebody who's undecided as to what to use. That may help them make a decision. I'll be caulking the seams, putting paint on this, and a few other things in the next video, so make sure you stop back to see that.